Here we go. Welcome everyone. Today's topic is resumes. My name is Audra Lavoie. Resumes are by far like the number one thing that bring people to me. So when I talk to somebody, we might talk about a lot of different things, but it almost always starts with that technical, that tangible, tell me what's up with resumes. So for today, we have three key areas we're going to talk about. One is this whole thing, the applicant tracking system. The other one are resume challenges that we see, and really challenges specific to a tracking system. And then the last one, I'm going to go through some questions that I frequently get asked and see if I can proactively answer some of the things you wonder about. So applicant tracking system, there's two terms that are really floating around a lot right now. One is ATS, applicant tracking system. The other one are HRIS, which is human resource information systems. They can do the same thing, or really a human resource system could have the applicant part too, and I'll get to that in a second. But basically, just like you go on Google and you search for stuff, an applicant tracking system are the computer eyes searching through your resume. And so on the back end, they're saying, does this resume have the stuff in the job description that we're looking for? Does it match? Once again, just like Google, you Google something or you Bing it or whatever, you use a system and then something comes back and says, oh, this is a high match, or this is a 99% match. Same thing's happening, but it's a system going through your resume. I often describe it as two sets of eyes, the human eyes and then the computer one. The Wall Street Journal actually just had an article, and it was really interesting because I like reading the Wall Street Journal for that business side, and they tend to be very business focused. But the article was really touching, where they were talking about people and all these people that are missing out from the opportunity. So they made it a very soft and very personal article. The big thing being, because somebody's resume is not formatted properly, it's not being read. So it's not being considered for a job. And that's why this is a really important topic to touch upon. Do companies use them? Yeah, a whole heck of a lot. And it's interesting because I've been talking about this topic for about 10 years now. And when I started, I remember doing a presentation and talking about there were about 80 or so tracking systems on the market. Now, 6 months ago, when I did research, I found over 440. I'm sure we are over 500 now. Like, it just kind of doubles and triples. And what has happened is it's become accessible to other companies. So while big companies have always found it to be valuable and to be worth that investment, now the price and the opportunities and smaller companies are also finding this to be really worth their investment. Within that, there are certain ones that lead the pack. And I will throw out a prediction and say that the ones that can really do those both sides, so the ones that can do the taking in the applicant and going through them, but then keeping them and being part of those employee systems, and you see this a lot with Workday and you see this a lot with ADP, I think they have the opportunity to really lead. So even though there's a whole heck of a lot of different systems out there, you're still going to see some prominent ones. And I often see Workday, Taleo, ICIMS, and ADP. For me, you might see other ones, but when you are searching and when you go to apply to a job, a lot of times right at the very top, when you look into that address, you can see which one it's stemming from, which it's just more for curiosity's sake. But the big thing and the big stress I want to have on this is to understand that when we talk about formatting, we're really just talking about what we think is the safest, considering there's so many different systems. And then, of course, there's the question of like, what does this look like? So there's a system, it goes into Oz, it's weird, it's a black hole. Now what happens and what does it look like? Depends on the system, they all look different, but this is just an example of what your human resources might be seeing on the back end. So what you're seeing here is a match, and they're using kind of a light system and a full bar. Others will actually use percentages, others use stars, others just will rank who's there. Depends on the system, but what they're looking for is how close the words in your resume reflect the words in the job description. And then there's all this other information that's here. That's the quick part. And this is really important because formatting, again, we want to make sure the formatting is readable so that it populates into these systems and the person behind the scenes can actually read, hey, this is their email, or here's the name of the person. Why they're used, essentially time and money. Everything always comes down to time and money. If you think about it, there are companies that will have, you have a mega company like Starbucks. Starbucks will have over 1 million applicants in the course of a year. So how are they going to go through that volume? It really is a way of like, let's move, let's have a system automate just like we automate so many other things. There is a perk that often gets discussed, which is about compliance and making sure that there is no one who are discriminating, whether intentionally or whether unintentionally. So the hope and the expectation is that having an automated system will help with that. And then, of course, time and money. You have an HR person who works, we'll say 9 to 5, but you have a system that could be operating 24 hours a day and really going through what's there. And then, of course, if I have a system, then I don't have to pay somebody, but then also the position, we can move through the process faster. So we're saving money there. So when it comes to those resumes and when we're thinking really about the applicant tracking system, what are the big challenges? Number one challenge, totally, absolutely, is formatting. And, when I say the 2 sets of eyes, in order to be visible, your resume has to be formatted in a certain way. And when I say have to, once again, we're looking at that. There's so many different systems. So it might be that you have a super beautiful, pretty, tons of graphics, ornate resume, and you have a sophisticated system and there's no issue. Or you can have a very basic system that you're working with that has a hiccup because you underline something. It's uncertain and it doesn't feel super to be like, I don't know what version I'm getting. So when I think about this, I always say, here's vanilla, here's your safest bet. Safest thing is going and still using Word. So, and if you don't have Word, use Google Docs version of Word. Going with those normal settings, avoiding graphics. And I've seen beautiful resumes where people put like the company logos and they look sharp. But we want to avoid putting any graphics, any charts, any sales forecasting, none of that stuff in there. Avoiding underlining, and that doesn't mean no lines, but it means when it touches the letters. Sticking to one column, this one's big. So this is probably like the number one thing I see is that people are, especially with like skills, they'll put their skills at the top and they're trying to save space. And so they're putting them in multiple columns, or they're trying to just make sure everything is really nicely organized. And so they're putting all of their dates in one column, content in another, and something else in a different one. Recommendation is to stick to one column and just take everything and align it over to the left-hand side. This system is looking to say, hey, where's the heading and where's the stuff under it? So I love creativity, but this is an area to say, what are they looking for? Well, gosh, they're really looking to see education, experience, work history, common words, volunteerism, civic engagement, associations, just those. This is what I expect to see on a resume. Avoid those headers and footers. So when I said that some system might look and not see your name or your address, it's because sometimes people have it hidden in a header or footer. So recommendation is to avoid that. If you're not sure, one good test is as you apply to a job, upload your resume first and then see how it populates the application. So if things aren't showing up, if they're going in funky places, then that's a good cue to say, okay, I need to make some sort of adjustment. And then that whole keyword thing, I throw it around, I talk about it all the time. What does it mean? Keywords are the words that you see frequently repeated. So if I'm looking at a management position in sales and it keeps talking about customer service and relationship building and Salesforce, those are some of the keywords. I keep hearing that. Now, some people will say, how do I even know? And they might turn around and just take, like, copy and paste, take the full content of a job description and pop it into something like a word cloud where they can see what becomes bigger. So they'll see words pop up and become bigger because they're used more frequently. So it's just a specific way. And then I've had people do that same exact exercise with their resume to then see, are those same words popping up big and popping up prominent on my resume? So that's one way to do it. If you're not sure where, my number one suggestion is the job description is king. And what I would do is find the best job description, the most detailed job description for something that interests you. It does not have to be a job you're applying for. It doesn't have to be in the state you're looking. It can be all the way across the country. It could be something that is, you're still a step or two away from. It could be your reach job, whatever. It doesn't matter. You just want it to have that really deep job description with all those details. And if I can write my resume to respond to that robust job description, then that resume is going to become so easy to work with for all the other jobs. It's going to be already prepped and in a really strong space. If you're looking and you're going, gosh, I'm not finding it, I'd say keep looking. But also there are other resources like the Bureau of Labor Statistics and ONET that are great for giving you a background of what that role looks like. So they're great to measure against for content too. The third challenge people have is straight up timing, and it's that things move fast, and especially if you are using those large search engines. We talked about them yesterday, but things like Indeed and LinkedIn and Monster and Glassdoor, they're huge, and thousands of people are using them, and they're looking at the same stuff you're looking at. So if they're faster and they're applying, and that company is finding, gosh, we have tons of great candidates to look through, they're going to stop looking. They might keep your stuff on file. They might hold off, and they might hire more than position. There's a lot of who knows, but we do know that timing is a thing. So you want to apply to jobs as new as possible and apply to them quickly. So the other thing that we get trapped in is that we'll save a job. We'll find a job that's really great. We'll save it. And then we'll go, okay, well, we'll apply back to it later or tomorrow or next week. And then it might be too late. So we want to find those great jobs. And when I say timing, I'm looking under 7 days for a large search engine, preferably around 3 days. And I want to apply within a day or so. So, time it accordingly. If you're using something that is a smaller search engine, if it's a state job, some will actually have closing dates. Some have, really a good solid 2 weeks. But if it's a big, large search engine, apply as quick as possible. Sometimes I ask people, how long do you think it takes to look at a resume? And if you're somebody who's looked at resumes, you can probably do this really fast. Like, you just start immediately looking through and going, what are the words that pop up and catch? So we know there's the computer that's doing the scanning and they're measuring, and it's more accurate. People do the same stuff. We just aren't quite as accurate. So how am I going to make sure that my resume stands out when there is a person who is looking and discerning, but also has a different attention span? So we know that recruiters look through resumes. A seasoned recruiter can really look at it in under 10 seconds. And that's quick. So when you're going, am I standing out? Great, let's review that. Strong action verbs, always. Stuff that gives the numbers, stuff that gives the experience. So I want that qualitative and quantitative. I do want to repeat words that are important to them. So if they keep talking about using ArcGIS, then I might, at the top of my resume, have a profile that says ArcGIS experience, but then I'm going to repeat it in context, all those different places I used it. I want them to understand my fluency in it. I want this to be specific to the job. So the question everyone asks is, can I just have one resume? You can, but remember, whatever that one resume was written for, that's going to be really strong. But if you're applying to different jobs or different companies that have prioritized a different skill set, then it's not going to be as strong a resource. Include a summary or profile. This is a style decision, but I like it. We know recruiters look at things really quick, but we also know that the most time is spent at the very top of the resume. So if at the very top, I can tell them, here's how I'm qualified for your job, then I'm immediately connecting with the things that they want. And then of course, anytime I can get it in somebody's hands. So if I have the chance, we have a job fair coming up next week that's engineering and technology. And I tell people, even if you're not like an engineer or IT, it doesn't matter. Just think of that industry and those companies. Are these people you want to connect with? Because is there an opportunity that would help you? If so, let me get my resume in someone's hands. Even when we have fairs and they say, oh, just fill it out online, they'll still accept it. And a lot of times they're still going to look at it because now they have something in their hands. Other than that, if you have referrals and people that are connected to that position, super helpful to give it to them and be in their hands literally or figuratively, that I've emailed it and they have it directly in their possession. Now structure. Ooh, sorry. Seeing if I can shrink some of my stuff's at the bottom of the page. So for structure, and when we get a little bit like breaking it down a little more as to how to stand out. A typical structure is thinking about that strong action verb, the activity, and the result. So that number piece, I threw in a couple examples trying to touch upon different areas, thinking about how many vendors you've worked with, thinking about a money piece. And this could be money saved, money gained. If you have exceeded your goals by a certain amount, if you're accessible. So sometimes numbers get tricky for somebody where they go, I'm not working with money. I'm not working with vendors. Where could I put in a number? I often say, think about how many people you're accessible to. So it's easy if I'm teaching a class and I might have 150 students that I work with. Okay, 150. And maybe they don't all come to my office hours, but I'm accessible to them all. Same thing. I might be in IT support, and no, I'm not going to everyone's desk or everyone's space or going into their computer every day. However, that whole network, that group, that department, whatever it looks like, however many people are in there, if I'm that point person, then that's the number of people I'm supporting. So thinking about that, or thinking about, say you're on a different end and you're doing really that retention and maintenance of a customer client. Okay, is there a number value to that? Are these contracts that are worth $1 million that you are the person who is the point person for? Where can we dig in a little bit and think about how much that is easy, but also how much go deeper and how much am I accessible to? Whenever I'm thinking about content, the things I tell people to ask themselves are who I worked with, who I worked for, systems, tools, technology, numbers, and skills. So we just talked about numbers, but let's say that I am in a healthcare position and who I'm working for is I might really be working that client. So maybe that client are pediatric, maybe it's elderly, maybe it's a specific population. Who I'm working with, I might be working with the doctors, the psychologists, the social workers. I may be working with administration. So these can be other additional things that if they serve me, if I'm applying to a job and it talks about relationship building, and I can go back and go, yes, in this healthcare role, I'm building relationships across this department and even across other departments and with community groups, then that's worth mentioning. For someone who is just starting out or someone who's making a career transition, a lot of times we'll talk about skills. So maybe I don't have that literal direct representation of what they're asking for, but I have a lot of the soft skills. So I have a lot of the behaviors and experience. Maybe I worked at Dunkin' Donuts for the past 6 years and I'm a recent graduate, and this company is totally different. I'm not looking at that customer service, but there's still a part about teamwork. There's still a piece about communication. There's still that piece about dependability. And those are the skills I can speak to. All right, frequently asked questions, and then we'll be wrapping it up. And once again, I'll open it up to any questions. Frequently asked questions I get: does my resume need to be on one page? So everything I'm gonna say in the questions, resumes are beautiful and stressing in different ways. I love resumes because there is a very fluid, flexible nature which says, here's a general rule or what serves me best. So everything is, we might say, how long should my resume, how much experience should it reflect? I'll give you a number, but then I'm also going to say, or what serves you best. So I'll balance those things. So does my resume need to be on one page? No. I mean, it can be, and definitely that is of a business mentality. I recommend not more than 2 pages unless you're looking in government or unless you're looking in academia. Those tend to be government, research, academia. Those tend to be much longer. But usually I say don't go beyond 2 pages. You might have an addendum, like my resume, I think is 2 pages, but then has an addendum with professional development, because that's been a big part of mine. If you can be on one page, awesome, be on one page. The big thing to ask yourself when it comes to the amount of space is, am I doing myself a disservice by removing it? So remember that applicant tracking system, that person too, they're doing the same thing. They're going through and looking at your content. If you're not giving them enough stuff to look at, then they don't know that you're qualified. They don't know that you can do the job. So I have to have the content there, and I don't want to leave it off and then they don't know that I'm capable of doing it. So the content is really important. And the big thing too, when we talk about tracking systems, it's not, I said something once, it's that there's the presence. So I want to repeat those words. So no, you don't have to be on one page. If you can, great. If not, aim for 2. If it's government, academia, it'll be longer. I graduated a few years ago. Where do I list my education? I think of a resume as a story of strengths. So at the very top, that pyramid, if you want to call it pyramid triangle, I want my most relevant stuff. That's why I like profiles. I like to highlight at the very tippity top, here is the things that qualify me most. And then I go down. So if you graduated 20 years ago, but your education in degree is in something you're applying to, and that's your most relevant, your biggest connection, it'll go at the top. Most of the time, as you are, we'll say generally, like 5 years or more out, most of the time your education will start to fall towards the bottom and your experience starts to lead. And there's no right or wrong here. You can do it whichever way you want, but think about what's most relevant for the job that I'm applying for. Is my GPA important? Not usually. As a graduate, I have had a couple of companies specific to accounting and like one in engineering that look for that GPA. Most places, once you've graduated, you have the degree and that's really all they're looking for. If anything says to include it, then you include it. What do I do if I don't have numbers? We talked a lot about that. Dig a little deeper, see where else you can think about for your numbers, especially when it comes to accessibility, who has access to me. What if I don't have experience in the job field? This is where we can go back to those skill sets and say what's related. It's also where networking is going to have to happen. So there's no kind of quick way about this. If I am missing experience, then I have to become relevant to the type of job I'm looking for. I have to make those connections. Should I include references? I only include references if it's required. I have them prepared, but I want to talk to my reference before I give their name and information out. Once again, unless it serves me. So if I'm applying to a job and my reference is an employee or is on the board of directors or has a close connection, then sure, I can include them early on. How do I know if my resume is working? In general, I tell people you should be getting about 5 to 10% response rate. And that just says my resume is working. You can also do the uploading thing and check it, see if it's populating the right spaces. How is a CV different from a resume? A CV is very structured. There's what you put and where you put it. So CVs are very systemed. They're also usually used more towards academia and research. So most places might say, include your CV or resume, or include your resume, or include the CV, but they really mean resume. So most places are looking for the CV, for the resume. Some will do a hybrid, so, for somebody who's transitioning, where it has a lot of the stuff, a CV, it talks about publications and presentations and teaching and research, but then we do a summary or something to make it feel a little bit more like a resume. What if I have an employment gap? Once again, go deep. What were you doing during that time? There are times where people are doing absolutely nothing, and this is really a health emergency. Other times they're in a role where they're doing caregiving, or they are volunteering, or they are in school. So I want to make sure that that time is filled, if possible, to know that, okay, maybe I wasn't in paid employment, but I was doing something. What response rate should I get? About 5 to 10% just for a straight up online resume submissions. And this will differ by industry. You'll find sales gets a lot of response. If you are in tech, that's another field that's getting high response rates. But it depends on you, and are you applying to the jobs that are at the right level too? Why does everyone have a different opinion? It drives people crazy. I completely understand. Once again, just like resumes, there's a beauty in it, which is to say there is not one right way. So as you are submitting something, and when people kind of get stuck in their head on, should I do this or this? There's not one right way. So go with what you think is best. Your opinion is number one. This is your resume. It's your branding. It's, listen, and whatever you agree with, use, but it's yours first and foremost. The next opinion that I weight heavier is a person who is hiring for the jobs you're interested in. Then I open it up and I start looking to, okay, who are professionals, who are professional career advisors, professional resume writers, other professionals who do this content. Great, I want to hear from them, but make sure that you're really focusing on who is most connected to the jobs that interest you, but then also make sure it's yours and you want to know it first. You want to feel good about it first. Excuse me, I'm going to escape for a second because I wanted to show you real quick as we wrap up the examples that I had. That's always helpful as we've talked about this. So this one was for a recent graduate. This one's utilizing that summary, but this one has kind of a paragraph style. As somebody who just graduated, in theory, this person has that academic experience towards the top because it's most related. And then they're going to talk about the internships. So this is one, and these are styles. Another one style-wise for somebody who's been out longer. This is my style. I like quick bullet points, but then the same thing goes into the content, utilizing that one column. This one has education at the bottom because it's the relevancy. And I'll email these out to all of you. So last quick things I want to show you or mention before I stop. Big thing when it comes to your resumes, simple format, obvious headings. Spell check. I just checked a resume the other day. Great resume. One little tweak where they, forgot a letter and it made another word, but it wasn't an appropriate word for what they were talking about. So spell check, have someone else read. Always compare to the job descriptions. These are the resources. So the things that I just showed you for resume examples are in here. There's a whole resume module from CCEE that kind of steps you through the process. Handshake is a great resource for the job search. URI Career Connect, this is a new system to us, but that one also will connect you with other URI alumni, and you can ask them to review your resume, which is always super helpful. And then if you want to talk to somebody directly, here are your advisors. So as alumni, you have Karen Urbano, a graduate student, Kara Mitnick. Undergraduate students, it depends on the major. So you have lots of resources that are available to you, and I say take advantage of them.